My wife flew to Europe for a vacation before the wedding and told me that we need a break, then blocked me everywhere. I canceled the wedding, and this crazy person started stalking me, even going to my mother's house. So, I've been with Sarah for 5 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but for the most part, things were good, stable, even. 3 years ago, we got engaged, and the wedding was supposed to be in just 6 weeks. 6 weeks. We booked the venue, picked out the cake, and sent out the invitations. All those details were checked off our list. It felt like the perfect next step for us. Sarah seemed as excited as I was. She'd even helped me pick out the tux and had spent weeks obsessing over her dress. She kept saying how she couldn't wait for our day to finally happen. But then, out of nowhere, she hit me with something I never saw coming. One night, after dinner, she casually mentioned that she was going on a last-minute trip to Europe with her friends from college. It was a random group of people, none of whom I particularly liked or trusted. But whatever, people go on pre-wedding trips all the time, right? I didn't think too much of it until she said, "I think we need a break." At first, I just stared at her, trying to process what she had said. We'd been talking about seating charts, choosing wedding songs, and where to go on our honeymoon just the night before. A break? What for? She was supposed to leave in 2 days, and now she wanted space? My mind was racing. I asked her why, what was going on. Sarah gave me the vaguest, most confusing explanation. She said she felt overwhelmed and needed time to think. Think about what? I asked, feeling panic bubbling up inside me. Our future, she replied. Our future? We're 6 weeks away from getting married. What do you need to figure out now? She shrugged, not looking me in the eye. I just think I need to clear my head. Europe is a good opportunity for that. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I pressed her for more details, but she clammed up. The more I asked, the more she shut down, until we were both frustrated. I tried to keep calm, but everything in my gut was screaming that something was wrong. The next day, she packed her bags like everything was normal. There wasn't some dramatic goodbye. She just said she'd call me when she landed, and then she left. I watched her drive off, my stomach in knots. The woman I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with had just walked out the door, leaving me with a million unanswered questions. For the first few days after she left, I tried to convince myself that everything was fine. Maybe she really did just need a break to clear her head. Wedding planning is stressful, right? But as the days went by, her texts became less frequent. Her replies were short, almost cold. The warmth I'd grown used to was gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I kept myself busy with work, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. But my friends and family were starting to notice something was off. I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain that your fiancé went on a spontaneous trip and asked for a break just weeks before your wedding? It sounded insane, even to me. 2 weeks into her trip, I started seeing some things on social media that didn't sit right with me. Sarah wasn't posting much, but her friends were. One of them, Emily, tagged her in a picture at some club in Paris, and she was draped all over some guy I didn't recognize. They weren't just standing next to each other. They were way too close. I stared at the screen, feeling my stomach twist. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just the angle, or maybe he was some old friend from college. I was probably blowing things out of proportion, right? But the photos kept coming, night after night, different places, different cities, and always that same guy. It wasn't just Emily posting either. Other friends of hers were sharing pictures and videos, and Sarah was always with him. Always. I tried calling her after I saw a video of them dancing together at some club in Barcelona. She didn't answer. She didn't even text me back until the next day, and even then, it was short. She said she was tired and would catch up with me later. The doubts were starting to consume me. I needed answers. When she finally called me back a few days later, I didn't waste any time. "Who's the guy?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What guy?" she replied, sounding confused. "The guy you've been hanging out with. The one in all the pictures." There was a pause, and then she sighed. "Oh, him? He's just a friend. You're being paranoid." Paranoid. She always used that word when she wanted to shut down a conversation, but I wasn't going to let it slide this time. "Sarah, he's in every single photo. You're always with him. And you look way too comfortable." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're overreacting. I told you I needed space. This trip was supposed to help me clear my head, and now you're making it all about some random guy." I couldn't believe it. Was she seriously turning this around on me? "So, what? You go on a break, and now you're acting like we're not even together." "We are together," she said, but there was an edge to her voice. "I just needed time to figure things out. Can't you respect that?" I didn't know what to say. I was furious, hurt, and confused all at once. She was acting like I was the problem, like I was the one who had asked for a break. I tried to stay calm, but it was getting harder by the minute. "Sarah, do you even want to get married?" I blurted out. There was another long pause. "I don't know," she finally said. Those 3 words hit me like a freight train. After 5 years together, 3 years of being engaged, and all the time we'd spent planning our future, she didn't know? After that, everything spiraled. Sarah's texts became even more distant, and when she did respond, it was always vague. She extended her trip twice, saying she needed more time to figure things out. Meanwhile, I was left at home trying to cancel the wedding plans without having to explain the whole situation. I told people we had to postpone, but the truth was, I didn't know if there would ever be a wedding. The worst part was, despite everything, I still loved her. I couldn't just turn off my feelings. I kept hoping she'd come back, that we could talk things out and fix whatever had gone wrong. But deep down, I knew things would never be the same. A month after she left, I got a phone call. It wasn't Sarah. It was Emily, the friend who had been posting all the pictures. "Hey, I think you should know something," she said, her voice shaky. My heart dropped. "What is it?" There's more going on with Sarah than she's telling you." I had suspected as much, but hearing it from someone else made it all too real. After that call with Emily, I was left with a sinking feeling in my gut. Emily didn't give me many details, but she hinted that Sarah wasn't just figuring things out on her trip. Whatever was happening, it was way worse than what I'd let myself believe. I felt like I was in free fall, but I still had this tiny shred of hope that Sarah and I could work things out, until she completely vanished. One morning, I woke up to find that Sarah had blocked me. Everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, even on WhatsApp. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent texts, and they didn't go through. I couldn't reach her in any way. It was like she had disappeared off the face of the earth. I tried contacting her friends. Most of them didn't respond, and the few that did claimed they hadn't heard from her either. It felt like a nightmare. Just days before, I'd been planning our wedding, and now my fiancé had completely cut me off. I was left in the dark with no explanation. It's hard to describe what that kind of silence feels like. Every day, I woke up hoping for some kind of message, some sign that she was okay or that she was coming back. But nothing. Days turned into weeks, and there was no word from her. My mind spiraled with possibilities. Was she okay? Was she hurt? Was she with that guy from the photos? The not knowing was torture. About 5 days after the blocking, I made the hardest decision of my life. I canceled the wedding. There was no point in waiting any longer. I knew, deep down, that Sarah wasn't coming back. The woman I thought I was going to marry had vanished, leaving me to pick up the pieces. Canceling the wedding wasn't easy. I had to call the venue, the caterer, the florist, everyone. It was a humiliating experience. I had to explain to people why we weren't getting married anymore, without really knowing the reason myself. Some of the vendors were sympathetic, others just wanted to know if they could keep the deposits. Every call felt like another punch to the gut. My family and friends were shocked. I hadn't told them much about what was going on because, honestly, I didn't even know what was going on. When I finally broke the news, everyone had questions. They wanted to know what happened, where Sarah was, why she'd left me. I didn't have any answers. I was just as confused as they were. I spent those next few weeks and days. Every morning I woke up, hoping it was all just a bad dream. But it wasn't. Sarah was gone, and I had to start accepting that. My life, the future I'd planned, had completely unraveled. After 6 weeks of complete silence, just when I had started to think she might never come back into my life, Sarah returned. Not in person, but in the form of an unexpected email. It was brief, cold, and to the point. She said she was sorry for how things ended, but she wasn't ready for marriage. That was it. No explanation, no details, no mention of the guy from the trip. She just wasn't ready. I stared at the email for what felt like hours. There was no closure, no chance to ask her why she blocked me, why she disappeared for 6 weeks without a word. It was like she had thrown 5 years of our life together into the trash with a couple of sentences. The worst part? She didn't even offer to meet or talk things out. It was just done, like we had meant nothing. I decided that I wasn't going to let her have the last word. I responded with a long message, pouring out everything I'd been feeling, how devastated I was, how much her disappearance had hurt me, how I couldn't believe she treated me like that after everything we'd been through. I asked her why she blocked me, why she couldn't face me. I wanted to know the truth. Did she cheat on me? Was she just afraid of commitment? I needed answers, some sort of explanation that would make sense of the chaos she'd thrown my life into. She never responded. With Sarah out of my life, I tried to move on, but it wasn't easy. My friends tried to be supportive, but I could tell they didn't know how to handle what I was going through. It wasn't like Sarah had just broken up with me. She had disappeared, shut me out, and then ended things with no warning. It was a betrayal on a level I hadn't thought was possible. A few weeks after the email, I ran into Emily again. She seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact, but eventually, she confessed something that shocked me to my core. Sarah had been seeing someone while we were still together. That guy from the trip? He wasn't just some random college friend. He was someone Sarah had been talking to for months, maybe even before we got engaged. I couldn't breathe for a second. Emily said she didn't want to tell me earlier because Sarah had made her promise to keep it a secret. She didn't know I would be blocked, or that Sarah would completely ghost me. She thought Sarah would eventually come clean, but she hadn't. She'd left me in the dark, stringing me along while she was off starting a new life with someone else. I thanked Emily for telling me the truth, but I walked away feeling like a fool. I'd spent weeks mourning a relationship that had been over long before Sarah left for Europe. I'd been lied to, manipulated, and discarded like I was nothing. The hardest part about all of this was facing the fact that I had been blind. There were probably signs I had ignored, little red flags that I brushed off because I loved Sarah and trusted her. I had no reason to suspect she was cheating on me, but looking back, the pieces started falling into place. There were times when she'd been distant, moments where she seemed more invested in her phone than in me. I always chalked it up to stress or work, but now I realized it was something more. The betrayal cut deep. I'd been planning a future with someone who had already checked out. I'd wasted years of my life on a relationship that was built on lies. And now, I had to figure out how to move forward. My friends told me to get back out there, to start dating again, but I wasn't ready. I didn't trust myself to make good decisions anymore. How could I, when I'd been so blind to Sarah's deception? I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the pain. But every now and then, something would remind me of her. A song, a place we used to go, a photo that popped up in my phone. It was like a ghost haunting me, refusing to let me forget what happened. As months passed, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on myself for the first time in a long time, taking up hobbies I'd let go of during the relationship. I reconnected with old friends, spent more time with my family, and started to feel like I was finding myself again. Slowly, the wounds began to heal, but the scars remained. Trust was something I struggled with. How could I believe in someone else when the person I thought I knew the best had betrayed me in such a profound way? One day, completely out of the blue, I received a message on social media from Sarah. She had unblocked me, and her message was long. She apologized for how she handled everything, saying that she was in a bad place mentally and didn't know how to deal with the pressure of the wedding. She admitted that she had been unfaithful, but she claimed it wasn't serious, that she never meant to hurt me. She said she missed me, that she hoped we could at least talk, maybe even rebuild our friendship. I sat there staring at the message for what felt like an eternity. A part of me wanted to respond, to tell her exactly how much pain she had caused. Another part of me wanted to delete the message and move on, to leave her in the past where she belonged. In the end, I didn't respond. I had spent too much time grieving over what I thought we had. Her apology, as sincere as it may have been, didn't change what she had done. It didn't erase the lies, the cheating, or the way she had blocked me out when I needed her the most. It took a long time, but eventually, I found peace. I learned to forgive myself for being blindsided and started focusing on my own happiness instead of mourning a relationship that wasn't worth saving. Sarah had shown me who she truly was, and I finally accepted that I deserved better. The experience changed me, made me stronger in a way I hadn't expected. I came out of it with a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted in a relationship. Trust, honesty, and communication. Those were the pillars I'd build my future on, not the fragile house of lies that Sarah had constructed. After months of silence, just when I thought I had finally started to move on from Sarah and the chaos she brought into my life, she resurfaced. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. I was at work, drinking my second cup of coffee, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, half expecting it to be a message from my boss or maybe a friend checking in. It wasn't. It was Sarah. Seeing her name on my phone screen again was like being hit with a wave of emotions I didn't want to feel. I hadn't heard from her in what felt like forever. After she blocked me, after all the lies and the cheating, I had convinced myself that she was gone for good. I had been working so hard to forget her, to move past the way she had shattered my trust. And now, here she was, casually reappearing like nothing had happened. I hesitated before opening the message. Part of me didn't want to. I knew that opening that door could pull me back into the mess I'd worked so hard to escape. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on it. Hey, can we talk? That was it. No apology, no explanation, just a casual message like we'd seen each other last week, like everything was fine. I could feel my anger building as I reread those 4 words over and over. After all the pain she caused, she had the audacity to ask if we could talk, as if a simple conversation could undo all the damage she had done. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I left her message on read and went about my day, trying to distract myself. But it was impossible. Her return was like a ghost haunting my thoughts, reminding me of everything I had been through. As much as I wanted to ignore her, I knew deep down that I needed to respond. I needed closure. I couldn't let her waltz back into my life and pretend like none of it had happened. Later that evening, after stewing over it all day, I finally messaged her back. What do you want, Sarah? It wasn't the friendliest reply, but after everything, I didn't know her friendliness. She responded almost instantly, as if she had been waiting for me to answer. I just think we should talk about everything. I'm back from Europe now, and I feel like we need to clear the air. Clear the air? That phrase made me laugh out loud, as if a simple conversation could fix months of betrayal, lies, and manipulation. But I still had questions. Questions I knew I wouldn't get answers to unless I heard her out. Fine, I replied, let's talk. When we finally spoke, it was clear from the start that Sarah was trying to downplay everything. She acted like her disappearance and the cheating were just minor bumps in the road, like they were things we could easily move past. She said she had been going through a lot and needed space to figure out her life, but that didn't mean she had stopped caring about me. She made it sound like her trip to Europe had been some kind of soul-searching journey and that she had come back with a new perspective. I never meant to hurt you, she said, her voice soft and apologetic. I wasn't buying it. You blocked me, Sarah. For weeks. You disappeared without any explanation, and you were with someone else. How could you say you didn't mean to hurt me? She sighed, as if I was the one being difficult. I wasn't ready to settle down yet. I panicked. Europe gave me space to think, and yes, I made some mistakes. But that doesn't mean we can't fix things. I was stunned by how easily she brushed off what she had done. Did she really think we could just go back to how things were? Like she hadn't completely shattered my trust? There's nothing to fix, I said, cutting her off. You cheated. You blocked me. You made your choice. We're done. For a moment, she didn't say anything. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, as if she was trying to figure out what to say next. I know I messed up, she finally said, but can't we at least try? I've been thinking a lot about us, and I miss you. I miss what we had. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything she'd put me through, she expected me to welcome her back with open arms? As if the months of pain and confusion meant nothing? No, Sarah. I'm not going back to that. You made your choice and I've moved on. You should too. Her tone shifted then. The soft, apologetic Sarah disappeared, and in her place was someone defensive, almost angry. So, that's it? You're just going to throw away 5 years? You're not even willing to talk things through? I'm not throwing away anything, I said firmly. You did that when you lied to me and blocked me. I'm done, Sarah. I don't want to talk anymore. I don't want anything to do with you. I hung up before she could say anything else. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the closure I had expected, but it was something. I had finally stood up for myself, refused to let her manipulate me any longer. After that, I knew I had to tell my friends and family about the breakup. I had kept most of them in the dark for too long. They deserved to know what had happened. So, I did what any millennial would do. I created a group chat. It was awkward at first, trying to figure out how to explain everything. How do you sum up months of betrayal in a few messages? But I was honest. I told them that Sarah and I were no longer together, that she had cheated on me and disappeared without a word. I didn't go into too much detail, but I made it clear that I was done with her and that I needed their support. The response was immediate. My closest friends, like Mike and Lisa, were shocked. They couldn't believe that Sarah, who had always seemed so sweet and dependable, could do something like that. My family was a mix of disbelief and anger. My sister, Emily, not to be confused with Sarah's friend Emily, was furious. She had always been protective of me, and hearing about what Sarah had done made her blood boil. But then, something unexpected happened. Sarah found out about the group chat. I still don't know how, but somehow, word got back to her that I had told our friends and family about the breakup. And instead of owning up to her mistakes, Sarah decided to play the victim. She joined the group chat, uninvited, and immediately started defending herself. She claimed that I had twisted the truth and that I was making her out to be the villain when she had been struggling with her mental health. She tried to paint herself as the one who had been hurt, saying that I wasn't supportive enough, that I hadn't given her the space she needed. At first, I was speechless. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to crash the group chat and spin the story in her favor. But then, my friends and family started responding. Sarah, you blocked him, Mike said. You disappeared for weeks without a word. How is that his fault? Lisa chimed in next. We saw the photos, Sarah. You were with someone else. You can't play the victim here. My sister, Emily, wasn't holding back either. After everything you put him through, you don't get to show up now and act like you're the one who was wronged. Take responsibility for what you did. The floodgates opened, and one by one, people started calling Sarah out for her lies. She tried to defend herself, but the more she spoke, the more obvious it became that she had no real excuse for what she had done. She couldn't justify her actions, and eventually, she stopped responding. The group chat went silent for a while after that. I was still reeling from the fact that Sarah had tried to twist everything around, but I was also overwhelmed by the support I had received. For the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. My friends and family had my back, and they weren't going to let Sarah manipulate them the way she had tried to manipulate me. In the weeks that followed, I started to feel a sense of freedom that I hadn't felt in a long time. Sarah was out of my life for good, and I finally had the closure I needed. I had cut ties with someone who had treated me terribly, and my friends and family were there to support me every step of the way. It wasn't easy. There were still moments when I thought about what could have been, about the life Sarah and I had planned together. But those moments became fewer and fewer as time went on. I started focusing on myself, my career, my hobbies, my relationships with the people who actually cared about me. And slowly, I started to heal. Sarah had tried to come back into my life, to act like everything could go back to normal. But I knew better. I wasn't the same person I had been when we first got together, and I certainly wasn't the person I was before she left for Europe. I was stronger now, wiser. I had learned that sometimes, the people we think we can trust are the ones who hurt us the most. And I had learned that it's okay to walk away from those people, no matter how much time you've invested in them. In the end, Sarah's return didn't break me. It gave me the chance to finally close the door on that chapter of my life and to start writing a new one where I was in control of my own happiness. And that, more than anything, was the closure I had been searching for. After Sarah's meltdown in the group chat, I thought it was finally over. I thought she had realized there was no going back. I was wrong. It started a week later. Out of nowhere, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously, half expecting it to be a telemarketer. But instead, it was Sarah's mother, Donna. We had always been on good terms before everything went down, so I didn't immediately hang up. Maybe she just wanted to check in, I thought, but I was wrong. "Hi, it's Donna," she began, her voice gentle, almost pleading. "I've been talking to Sarah, and she's really upset about everything that happened. I know she made mistakes, but she's genuinely sorry. She misses you, and I think if you just talked, you could work things out." I didn't even know how to respond at first. Did she not know what Sarah had done? Or worse, did she know and still expect me to forgive her? "Donna, I appreciate the call, but Sarah and I are done. There's no fixing this," I said, trying to keep my tone polite, though I was getting frustrated. "She's been going through a tough time," Donna pressed on. "Europe was a mistake, and she realizes that now. She's even seeing a therapist to work on herself. She's trying, really trying, and I think you should give her a second chance." I took a deep breath. "Donna, I understand that you love your daughter and want to help her, but she blocked me, disappeared, and cheated. I can't trust her anymore. I'm sorry, but there's no going back." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she was going to drop it. But then she hit me with, "But what about the 5 years you spent together? You don't just throw that away." 5 years. It seemed like everyone, Sarah, her mother, even some of our mutual friends, kept bringing up that number, as if it was a magic argument that could erase all the pain, betrayal, and deceit. "I'm not throwing anything away, Donna," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But Sarah already made her choice. I'm just trying to move on." Donna sighed, clearly disappointed, but she finally let it go. "All right, I understand. I just thought I'd reach out. I hope you'll think about it." I assured her I would, though I knew I wasn't going to change my mind, and the call ended. That wasn't the last time I heard from Donna or Sarah's friends. Over the next couple of weeks, I got several more calls and texts, mostly from people on Sarah's side, trying to convince me to reconsider. It felt like they were all reading from the same script. "Sarah's sorry, she's working on herself. You should give her another chance." At first, I was polite, but eventually, I got fed up. It wasn't just Donna. Some of Sarah's friends, like her closest one, Becca, started reaching out too. I'd never been particularly close with Becca, but I'd always gotten the sense that she wasn't a huge fan of mine. Now, suddenly, she was acting like she was on a mission to get us back together. "Look, I know Sarah screwed up, but she's been crying every day since you broke things off," Becca told me in one of her texts. "She's really trying, and I think you owe it to her to at least talk." Owe it to her? That phrase hit me hard. I didn't owe Sarah anything. She had broken my trust, walked out on our relationship, and disappeared without a word. Now I was the bad guy because I didn't want to give her another shot? It felt surreal. But despite all the pressure, I stood firm. I ignored most of the calls and texts after a while. The more people pushed me to forgive Sarah, the more resolute I became. I was done with her, and no amount of guilt-tripping from her family or friends was going to change that. Just when I thought things couldn't get more ridiculous, Sarah started ramping up her own efforts. It began with texts. Even though I had already blocked her on most platforms, she found ways to reach me through new numbers, email, and even letters. Each message was the same, a variation of, "I'm sorry, please talk to me," and "I miss you." Some were long, drawn-out apologies, while others were short and desperate. At first, I ignored them, but when the messages kept coming, I responded once, thinking maybe it would finally make her stop. "Sarah, please stop contacting me. I'm done. There's no going back. Move on." But she didn't stop. Instead, she doubled down. She began sending longer messages, telling me how much she regretted everything and how much she missed me. She brought up the idea of couples therapy and even said she had already scheduled a session for us without my consent. The fact that she thought she could make decisions like that without even consulting me only proved how out of touch she was with reality. When I didn't respond to that, Sarah took things a step further. She started showing up at my place. The first time it happened, I was caught off guard. It was a Saturday morning, and I was getting ready to head out for a run when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I looked through the peephole, and there she was, standing on my doorstep like nothing had happened. I froze. I hadn't seen her in months, and the sight of her standing there brought back a flood of emotions I didn't want to deal with. I thought about ignoring her, pretending I wasn't home, but I knew she wouldn't leave. So, reluctantly, I opened the door. "Hey," she said softly, looking up at me with those same eyes I used to love. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" I asked, my voice cold. "I just wanted to talk," she said, her voice almost pleading. "I miss you and I." I cut her off. "We've already talked. There's nothing left to say. Please, just give me a chance to explain," she said, stepping closer, her eyes wide with desperation. I shook my head, stepping back. "No, Sarah, we're done. You need to leave." She looked like she was about to cry, but I didn't let myself feel bad. She had put me through months of hell, and I wasn't about to let her back into my life just because she was feeling sorry for herself. "I love you," she whispered, her voice trembling. I closed the door in her face. I thought that would be the end of it. Surely, after showing up and getting shut down, she'd take the hint. But no, she started showing up more frequently, often late at night, knocking on my door, begging to talk. Sometimes I wouldn't even answer, hoping she'd just leave, but she'd stay outside for what felt like hours, trying to convince me to let her in. It was unsettling. I began to feel like a prisoner in my own home. Then, things took a darker turn. One evening, I was out with friends when I got a call from my mom. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I answered, she sounded concerned. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, why wouldn't I be?" I replied, confused. "Well, Sarah called me earlier," she said, her tone serious. "She was asking about you, wondering why you won't talk to her." She sounded off. I'm worried. My stomach dropped. Sarah was contacting my mom now? She was crossing every boundary imaginable. I had kept most of the details of our breakup from my family, but now she was dragging them into this mess. "I'm fine, Mom," I reassured her. "But Sarah's been showing up at my place, and now she's calling you? This is getting out of hand." "I think you need to do something," my mom said, her voice laced with concern. "She doesn't sound like she's in a good place." I knew my mom was right. Sarah's behavior was escalating, and I was starting to feel unsafe. It wasn't just about her showing up at my place anymore. She was crossing boundaries that made me feel trapped, like I couldn't escape her no matter how hard I tried. The final straw came when Sarah showed up at my workplace. I work in an office downtown, and we have security at the front desk, so I never expected her to show up there. But one afternoon, as I was coming back from lunch, I saw her sitting in the lobby, waiting for me. My heart sank. I couldn't believe she had actually gone this far. I turned around and walked straight back outside, not even acknowledging her presence. My hands were shaking as I called security and told them to make sure she was escorted out. I knew then that this had to stop. That evening, I called a lawyer. I explained everything, how Sarah had been contacting me nonstop, showing up at my place, harassing my family, and now even coming to my workplace. The lawyer advised me to file for a restraining order. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I knew it was the only way to get my life back. The process was difficult. I never imagined I'd be filing a restraining order against someone I once loved, someone I had planned to marry. But Sarah had crossed too many lines. She had become obsessive, and I couldn't live like this anymore. The restraining order was granted, and once Sarah was served, the visits, the texts, the calls, they all stopped. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt free. In the weeks that followed, I slowly began to rebuild my life again. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when I thought about Sarah, about what we had before everything went wrong. But those moments became fewer and farther between as I focused on moving forward. Sarah had been a huge part of my life for 5 years, and letting go of that was hard. But in the end, I realized that the person I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I had to accept that, for my own sanity. The restraining order was the final chapter in a story that had gone on far too long. It wasn't the ending I had expected, but it was the one I needed. And now, for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe.